The clock ticked past midnight. Daniel adjusted his headphones, alone in the warm glow of the Harmony Springs radio studio. A graveyard shift DJ, he spun jazz records for insomniacs and night owls. The playlist was routine, comforting in its familiarity. Outside, the small town slept, oblivious to the unsettling melody about to be unleashed. Daniel's fingers drummed on the mixing board. He surveyed the collection of dusty vinyl, his gaze settling on a worn record tucked away in the corner. It was a 1940s jazz album he'd found hidden in the station's basement, its cover blank, its grooves promising a forgotten tune. Intrigued, Daniel placed the record on the turntable, the needle hissing as it found its groove. A slow, mournful saxophone melody filled the studio, the music tinged with an almost tangible sadness. The notes seemed to seep into the room, wrapping around Daniel like a cold fog. He felt a shiver run down his spine, an inexplicable unease settling in his gut. The phones remained silent, the usual late-night callers seemingly scared off by the melancholic tune. The silence was shattered by the shrill ring of the request line. Daniel jumped, startled by the sudden noise. He hesitated, a strange reluctance to answer washing over him, but the professional in him reached for the receiver. "You're on the air," he announced, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. Silence. Then, a voice, raspy and low, whispered through the receiver, "Don't stop the music." Daniel frowned, pushing the headphones away from his ear. "Hello?" he asked, his voice tight. "Who's there?" The only response was the faint crackle of static. He was about to hang up, attributing the call to a prankster, when the voice returned, closer now, as if whispering directly into his ear. "You played it!" it hissed. "Now you must let it play!" Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Daniel's apprehension. He slammed the phone down, heart pounding against his ribs. The music continued, its mournful melody now tainted with a sinister undertone. He fumbled for the controls, desperate to silence the unsettling tune. But his fingers seemed to move with a life of their own. The music played on, louder now, filling the studio with its haunting melody. He stumbled back from the mixing board, fear morphing into a chilling certainty. He wasn't alone. The air grew heavy, the temperature in the studio plummeting as a wave of icy dread washed over him. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and he could sense eyes on him, watching, waiting. A flicker of movement in the reflection of the soundproof window caught his eye. His own reflection stared back at him, but it was wrong. The eyes were hollow, bottomless pits of darkness, and a grotesque smile stretched across its lips, mocking his terror. Panic clawed at Daniel's throat. The record player continued to spin, the mournful saxophone echoing his mounting fear. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed 911, but the line was dead. A wave of dizziness washed over him, the walls of the studio seeming to close in, suffocating him. The music grew louder still, the notes twisting into a cacophony of sound that drilled into his skull. He scrambled back, tripping over a stray cable, and landed hard on the floor. From his vantage point he could see the shadow under the door, darker than it should be, pulsing faintly with an eerie light. He was trapped, imprisoned within the confines of the radio station with something evil. He scrambled to his feet, his eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. The temperature plummeted further, the air thick with a palpable sense of dread. The music reached a crescendo, the saxophone wailing like a banshee, and the lights in the studio began to flicker erratically. Suddenly the phone on the request line rang, its shrill tone cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. Daniel stared at it, his blood turning to ice. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that it was the same voice, the same rasping whisper that would greet him. Hesitantly, he reached for the receiver. "Hello?" His voice was a choked whisper, barely audible above the din of the saxophone. "You must play it again," the voice hissed, its tone laced with a terrifying urgency. "The song, it must be played." Daniel's blood ran cold. He recognized the voice. It was his own, yet distorted, twisted into something sinister and unrecognizable. The phone slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. He backed away, his gaze fixed on the turntable as the record spun relentlessly. The music seemed to wrap around him, pulling him in, suffocating him. His back hit the wall, and he slid to the floor, his eyes wide with terror. The studio lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. For a fleeting moment, he saw a figure standing over him, its features obscured by shadow, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. Then, darkness consumed him. The next morning, the cleaning crew found Daniel slumped against the wall of the radio studio, the headphones still clasped around his ears, a look of sheer terror etched on his face. The record player spun endlessly, the haunting melody of the forgotten jazz song filling the air. Despite their best efforts, no one could explain the strange occurrence or silence the record player. The music played on, a constant, chilling reminder of the haunting mystery of the last broadcast.